The fallout. How a false accusation shattered my family my parents believed a lie. A false accusation against my brother, and it tore our family apart. I escaped that toxic home, fighting to live with my brother instead. I'm 14, and I've wanted to share this story for a long time. Please bear with me. It's a long and difficult narrative. I know it sounds unbelievable, but trust me, it's all true. This ordeal has devastated my family, and I'm not allowed to talk about it since my parents want to erase what they did. So, for safety, I'm sharing this from my friend's brother's Reddit account. My parents both lost spouses before meeting. My dad separated from my older sister Lucy's mom. Lucy is now 25. My mother lost her ex-husband in a car accident, leaving her to raise my brother. He's 23 now. They were both single parents with custody of their kids. They met at the beach, exchanged numbers, started dating, and married 2 years later. Let's get into the story. It all started when I was 8. My brothers were 17 and 19. My brother Kirby was in his junior year of high school. My sister worked at a local grocery store. Since my parents and sister worked, I often stayed with Kirby. It might sound odd, but my best memories are from time spent with him. I know many older brothers don't get along with their younger siblings, but that wasn't us. I loved Kirby with all my heart, and I know he felt the same. He always looked out for me, played with me, studied with me, and even took the blame for me sometimes. One day after school, I waited for Kirby in front of the building. He usually picked me up since our schools were close, but this time he didn't show. I waited until 4 p.m. when my sister arrived. I asked about Kirby, but she just dodged the question. When we got home, I was stunned by the sound of things breaking and my parents' terrified shouts. Inside, the situation was horrific. Kirby was on the floor. My dad was kicking him and throwing dishes, and my mom was screaming awful things. At him, I was so scared I clung to my sister. She led me upstairs and told me not to leave the room until further notice. I stayed there listening and crying. I'd never seen my family like that, and I'm still terrified of them to this day. Suddenly I heard sirens. Peeking out the window, I saw 2 police cars and many officers going in and out of the house. Shortly after, I heard more shouts, and then an officer's voice announcing an arrest. I watched as my father and mother were forced into a police van. My parents screamed and cursed at my brother, calling him a disgusting worm who deserved to die. My mother especially agreed. After they were taken away, around 2:10 p.m., I went downstairs. Lucy was crying on the floor, with Kirby holding her. He was covered in blood and bruises. After that, everything's a blur. I only remember being in an ambulance and then the hospital. It felt like a dream, but my sister says it was a nightmare, the worst day of her life. About 3 days later, my parents were still in jail for assault and attempted murder, so my sister took time off to care for me. Finally, I found the courage to ask her what happened. Lucy, the first person to treat me like an adult, told me the truth. Our brother Kirby was falsely accused of rape by a girl in high school. Went to the principal, crying and bruised, claiming Kirby had abused her. Our parents, the girl's parents, and the police were all called to the school. Kirby tried to explain he didn't do it, but our parents refused to listen, siding with the girl instead. When the police said they'd investigate and conduct tests, Kirby and the girl were allowed to go home, and something happened. My brother is now in the hospital, at risk of serious physical complications from the abuse. The next day, the police called my sister in and required me to go with her. What they told us was shocking, to say the least. The girl who filed the report was named Karen. Karen, if you're reading this, you are the most terrible person I know. I hope you burn in hell, you monster. You ruined our lives. She filed a bogus report because she and Kirby hated each other at school. After another fight, she hurt herself and planned to claim he hit her. But the plot evolved into a rape accusation, hoping to get my brother expelled. However, she made a mistake and told her friends about it on a video call, which made them laugh. What she didn't expect was for everyone to turn against her, except for her best friend, who had been sexually abused as a child and wasn't believed until recently. Karen's former best friend went to the police, told them everything, and even managed to record some of their conversation. After this friend confessed, the police questioned Karen in fearing arrest. She told the truth. My sister was furious. She wanted to kill Karen, but the police calmed her down, explaining that Karen's parents would have to pay a fine for the false charge and defamation. My sister thought it was fine, but not enough. When we got home, our parents were there. As soon as my sister saw them, she exploded, shouting about everything that had happened at the police station. They listened in silence, growing more startled. With each sentence, my mother was already in tears by the time my sister finished, and I felt frozen. Then, my father did the worst thing. He said, "Are you sure about this?" That was the worst use of words I've ever heard. Lucy then gave a long lecture about what terrible parents they were for believing the situation without any proof. Father tried to rationalize that the girl's words were very valuable, but my sister argued that without evidence, words were meaningless. I understand that many victims of assault are labeled as liars when their allegations are unproven, but this situation was different. Karen lied and manipulated everyone for petty reasons. I hope you can understand. My father was defeated, and the house was silent for several days. It wasn't the same without Kirby. He was the soul of our home, kind and friendly to almost everyone. He always brought us joy. I still don't understand how my parents were so easily swayed by Karen. I hate them for that. I will never forgive them. Kirby eventually woke up, but he was in terrible shape. To give you an idea, his jaw was fractured. He lost 60% vision. In one eye, his arm and wrist were broken, his ribs were severely wounded, and he narrowly avoided puncturing a lung. His leg was so badly injured he would never walk normally again without assistance. He also suffered from PTSD, depression, and anxiety. My brother was never the same. He's still in severe pain and needs a lot of controlled medication. He didn't talk for weeks, and even after the device holding his jaw was removed, it didn't change much. He only responded when asked a question, didn't say anything when he was hungry, and often burst into tears. I believe it was due to the trauma. I wanted to hug him, but his injuries were so severe it was dangerous. My parents tried to visit my brother many times. My mother pleaded, and my father tried to push us to accept them, but my sister wouldn't allow it. She knew my brother didn't want to see them and told them so, but it wasn't enough. One day, my mother couldn't visit him due to work, but my parents saw this as a chance for a secret visit. I think their thought process was probably, "Let's go see our son, apologize. He accepts. We'll be fine, and we'll be one big happy family again." What a huge mistake. Soon as they entered the room, my brother let out the biggest scream I'd ever heard from him. Soon, doctors and nurses rushed in to calm him down. He yelled, "Get them out of here. They're murderers. They've come to kill me. Please, take them out of here." Kirby screamed and then fainted from stress. Of course, after that, my parents were banned from visiting Kirby. Only my sister and I were allowed to see him. My mother sobbed all night, and my father blamed our brother, claiming he was exaggerating. Kirby was discharged from the hospital after months of physical and mental recovery. My parents had the nerve to invite him home. However, Kirby responded, "I would not return to this house, even if it were the last place on earth. I am now motherless. I hope you both pay for what you've done to me." Kirby moved in with his paternal grandparents, who had no idea of the circumstances before then. They took precautions against our parents. He welcomed my sister and me to visit him any time, and we did. In fact, I spent more time with him than my parents at home. The final straw came during a family gathering when we discovered that my father had lied to our entire family. He told them that Kirby had dropped out of school to live in a drug-infested environment and had run away from home, taking his belongings and the money they were saving for my college. But my parents didn't earn that money. Kirby and Lucy were the ones who saved it for my tuition. Kirby had done several odd jobs and was saving because he believed I deserved a better future. My sister and I were furious. We told our family the whole truth, and they were shocked and upset with our parents. My paternal grandparents were the only ones who defended my parents, saying it's human to err and that they had done nothing wrong. They claimed my parents were simply ashamed of their deeds, but no one else agreed. The rest of the family left my parents and went to apologize to Kirby. Fun fact, the next day Kirby called me, confused. He wondered why people he hadn't spoken to in months suddenly came to apologize to him. Karen's parents came to our home a year after the incident. They asked if Kirby was home, and when we said no, they apologized for what had happened before leaving. Later, I learned they had come to offer Kirby compensation, giving him all the money intended for Karen's college and car. My brother thanked them but stated, "I haven't forgiven Karen and never will. If she ever appears in front of me, I'll tell her some unpleasant truths." Karen's parents accepted his statement and left. My older brother is doing much better now, though he's still not completely healed. He still has nightmares about that day, which regularly trigger anxiety attacks. Someone has to go to him and calm him down. I want to be there for him, help him, and get away from the toxic world we live in. That's why I've decided to move in with Kirby. Initially, I talked with my brother. He was hesitant at first, but eventually accepted the idea and told his grandparents, who consented. I also chatted with Lucy, who thought it was an excellent idea. However, when I spoke with my parents, the story was completely different. My mother burst into tears, and my father became hysterical, claiming everyone had already abandoned them, and now their youngest son would do the same. I became upset and told him that I had already abandoned him that fateful afternoon, and he would never get me back. My father, a man in his 50s who always said crying was for sissies, started wailing like a baby. He explained that he had already lost everything and didn't want to lose me too. I couldn't bear the situation, so I left the house and went to a friend's to vent. Admonished me, saying I shouldn't abandon my parents like that. His older brother, Steve, the creator of this Reddit account, interfered and told him to quiet down, claiming he knew nothing. Steve told me his brother had a poor mind and pushed me to seek other viewpoints. He introduced me to Reddit and suggested I post my question here. So gentlemen, what should I do? Update 1. Anew. Beginning? Well, a lot has happened since my initial post. I had a question, but I'd like to thank everyone for helping me make up my mind. Thank you so much for your encouraging words, and thank you to Steve, the owner of this account, for his support as well. Let's get started. I ended up fleeing my home since my parents had forbidden me from leaving. Waited until they went shopping together, something they frequently did without me because they treated me like a child and assumed I'd just beg them to buy stuff. However, this time, they insisted I join them, which threw off my plans. I decided to pack essentials in a backpack, along with some snacks. As soon as we arrived at the market, I wanted to use the restroom. Fortunately, my parents were so preoccupied with the rising food prices that my father just told me to go and return quickly. Plot twist. I did not come back. I dashed out of the market and boarded the bus closest to Kirby's grandparents' home. When I arrived, Kirby's grandma welcomed me and encouraged me to relax while waiting for Kirby and his grandfather to return. When they arrived, I told them what had happened, including what I had posted on Reddit. My brother's reaction was not what I expected. He said it was highly irresponsible of me to flee, that it was risky, and that something terrible could have happened. It might sound strange, but I like it when he scolds me. Unlike our parents, he genuinely cares about me. I could be gone for 3 days, and they wouldn't notice. In truth, it had happened previously. They just became enraged when they discovered it. I took the scolding well and asked if I could stay. My sibling commented, "You will come back here, even if I send you back to their house, so you better stay." I was overjoyed and hugged him. His grandparents were likewise thrilled with my brother's decision, but my elation faded when he said that I would have to contact my parents. I resisted, knowing they would come for me, but my brother insisted, saying they are responsible for you, and if you don't tell them, they can call the police and claim that I kidnapped you and am holding you hostage. I hesitantly called my mother. She barely responded before she began yelling at me and asked where I was. When I told her, they became even angrier, ranting in such a heartless tone that everyone around me could hear. I could have stood there and listened to them yell. But I hung up when I noticed Kirby was becoming uncomfortable. Following the aggression, he developed a sensitivity to yelling. He cursed his parents for what they had done to him. My parents became enraged and threatened to take me by force, but my brother responded, "They are aggressive, but not idiots. They are aware that I have a protective order against them. If they approach, we'll call the cops." How mistaken he was. An hour and a half later, they were knocking on the front door, yelling and screaming at my brother for future generations. Kirby's grandparents urged them to leave, or they'd contact the police. This simply made them angrier, so they returned to hammering on the door. I wanted to go down and tell them to leave, but Kirby needed me. I had to pull him back because he wanted to confront them and express his fury in person. He harbors a lot of resentment towards them. He even stated once that he intended to kill them slowly and horribly. I agree with the sentiment, but I do not believe he should get his hands dirty with them. Then they burst down the door and began wrecking the house in search of me. At that point, I decided to go downstairs and dismiss them. I was trying to calm my brother down by asking him to stay in the room while I handled the problem. My mother let out the greatest scream I'd ever heard, and my father went silent. After persuading my brother to remain in the room, I went downstairs, and the situation could not have been more bleak. My father was sprawled on the floor, shivering, while my mother stood over him, screaming and calling out to him in vain. I noticed that Kirby's grandfather was clutching a taser. I believe we all know what occurred, right? When my mother saw me, she screamed, "Look what they did to your father. Call the police, they should be arrested." I replied that if I called the police, she and my father would be arrested for violating the protective order. She ignored me and kept screaming, insisting that we call an ambulance for my father. We disregarded her, suggesting that once my father healed, they should leave and never return. When my father finally returned to his senses, he was unusually silent, defeated, and beaten. My brother quickly appeared downstairs. Our mother instantly verbally assaulted him, resulting in a heated argument. She began blaming him for everything, claiming he was the reason all of our family had abandoned her and that her children had turned their backs on her. She blamed herself, claiming that she was an innocent woman who went to church every Sunday and did not deserve to go through this. I'm not sure what she meant by it. Nobody would feel sorry for her simply because of that. Kirby remained mute throughout her screaming crises, but she eventually crossed the line. She stated that he was meant to apologize to them for destroying their lives and inform everyone in the family that he had forgiven them. That was the limit. Kirby, furious, slapped her so hard that she tumbled to the ground. My mother began screaming again, but Kirby told her to stop, or he would crush her teeth with the base of the cane. He screamed, letting out everything he'd been holding in for years. How unhappy they were, how they dug their own graves, and how they didn't deserve anyone around them. He further stated that when they died, he would make a point of peeing on their coffins. My mother became enraged and attempted to punch Kirby, but I shoved her against the wall. She began ranting at me as well, claiming I would go to hell for abandoning her and referring to me as a dirty lesbian who would also go to hell. For perspective, I am bisexual, and I made the mistake of informing my parents. Surprisingly, my father was fine with it, but my mother was furious, claiming I was destined and even forbidding me to be bisexual. She introduced me to her church, friends' daughters, which made them uneasy. The strange thing is, when I told my brother, he just remarked, "So you give me a nephew? Let's stay cool." My brother then began demanding them to leave and pay for the damage they had done to the house, or we would file a complaint. My mother laughed, stating that I wouldn't have the courage to report my own mother. I replied, "What I have most is courage, and I would have the satisfaction of seeing you arrested again." Again, she made excuses, claiming we didn't have proof but my brother shut her down, pointing out that we had fingerprints, video evidence, and even footage from security cameras. It took her a long time to accept defeat, but they eventually left. But my brother wanted to add one more jab. As my mother entered the car, Kirby exclaimed, "Hey, I wish you could have died in my father's place." In response, she flashed him the middle finger and screamed as she climbed into the car, making my brother laugh a triumphant laugh, as if he had just won a long round of his favorite video game. Soon later, our sister called to say our mother had informed her she had been assaulted by Kirby and needed to bring me home to fix me. My sister, on the other hand, expressed her pride in me for standing up to them and joked that Kirby should have broken the cane over their heads. Now I'm living with my brother as I've always desired, and it's been amazing. He's determined to acquire custody of me and has threatened our parents to give it to him in any manner. My mother is resolute, stating that she will not leave me with an abuser. She presumably thinks I am bisexual because my brother molested me. How crazy is that? I believe it is only a matter of waiting for her to succumb. For the time being, everything appears to be proceeding as planned. I had a passionate talk with my brother before he fell asleep. He was thinking about what life might be like if his father was still living. I informed him that his life could have been a little better, but he said, maybe not. If he hadn't died, I might not have experienced the aggression, but I wouldn't have my two angels in my life. Then he kissed my forehead. I must confess that was very lovely. I hugged him, adore him, and I am confident that we will always defend each other. Thank you to everyone who has supported me. I hope nobody has to go through what we did. For those who feel our narrative is untrue, I wish it were. I wanted us to be a good family that accepts and protects one another regardless of the circumstances. However, this can only occur in my dreams. See you folks. Maybe I'll update with the outcome of the procedure. So, see you then. Update 2. The confrontation and the ultimatum. Hello everyone. Thank you very much for your support. Believe me, I am fine. And my brother is better. But fine is insufficient for him. He wants my custody at any means, and is pursuing my parents with everything he has. Well, I wouldn't be here just to say we're fine. So let's get to the point. We were enjoying a peaceful afternoon when there was a knock on the door, which had already been repaired by a friend of Kirby's grandfather. I went to answer, but was astonished to see my father present. I immediately tried to send him away, but he said that he simply wanted to communicate and didn't want to make a fuss. I told him to F*** off and that we would only communicate in court. However, my father insisted, and Kirby's grandparents threatened to contact the police. To our amazement, Kirby said to let him in. He questioned him, but Kirby simply stated that my father was persistent and wouldn't leave easily. So it was best to allow him in and get it over with. So we let him in, but we were prepared in case he became aggressive. Kirby sat at the kitchen table, and we all remained in the kitchen for protection. Kirby's grandmother was recording the conversation to provide additional evidence that my father was violating the protective order. The conversation went as follows. Kirby, very brave of you to come back here after all you've done. My dad, I'm sorry. I swear I'll pay for all the damage. Kirby, pay. Of course you believe you can solve anything with money, correct? But I am not talking about tangible stuff which are replaceable. What you accomplished for me was priceless. Father, I know, I apologize. I promise I will give my life to travel back in time. I'd do everything differently. Kirby, yeah, but you can't travel back in time. The damage is already done. You devastated me. You destroyed your family. Father, but there was an accident. If you had told us from the start, things may have been different. Kirby, more lies. You did not want to listen to me. Do you understand what you did to me? You made me feel unworthy of living? You've made me want to die? Do you have any concept of how that feels? No, because you are the aggressor, and the aggressor will never feel the victim's terror. You son of a B******H. Kirby began to cry at that point, but it was a cry of wrath and bitterness that he had suppressed for many years. My father continued to apologize in vain, but my brother claimed that his sole motivation was to feel better about himself, not to sincerely regret what he had done. However, my father continued to apologize to the point where my brother issued his ultimatum despite The fact that he was on the verge of another anxiety attack? Kirby, do you want forgiveness? Here's what we plan to do. You are going to grant me custody of my brother. You'll pay his child support, and you'll never try to get close to me, him, or anybody else again. Or else, we'll make your days a miserable hell. Immediately, I'll tell you, I don't feel sorry for him, but I've never seen him so defeated as he was at that point. I believe the shock of his deeds finally hit him hard, but I feel no sympathy for him. He deserves it. He deserves to feel the pain he has caused our family. He left shortly after, stating he was going to try to persuade my mother to relinquish custody of me. He, too, appealed for forgiveness, but I simply ignored him. My brother burst into tears the moment he went out the door. I believe his courage had gone at that point. He began crying and collapsed to his knees on the floor, hyperventilating and sweating cold. We escorted him into his room so he could lie down. We offered him anxiety medication, but it didn't seem to help. I contacted my sister and explained all that had transpired. She arrived instantly, and we all remained in the room, attempting to calm him down. My sister repeatedly told my brother that he was one of the bravest persons she knew. Despite his anxiety, he was brave enough to remain in the same room with our father, his abuser, and, as he called it, his murderer. After several hours, my brother finally calmed down and fell asleep. Lucy and I slept in his room just in case he had nightmares afterwards. But, of course, nothing can end like that. My mother called us many hours later, inquiring what that demon Kirby had done to her husband. She accused my brother of having captivated her sweet hubby and claimed he now wanted to give everything to Kirby. My sister simply ordered her to F*** off, noting that at least one of them had come to their senses. So I hope everything works out and my mother finally comes to her senses and does the right thing. Thank you so much for everyone's support, especially Steve. Owns this account and has always been there for me since I first told my tale. While I'm gone, I'll give updates if anything changes. See you later. If you're asking why I use phony identities, it's to preserve my brother's privacy. I do not want their life to be invaded. Update 3. Freedom and finality. Everyone, it's been a while. You deserve the most recent update, and I can say I'm overjoyed that it's finally finished. It's truly over. I'm free of that place and those people. In my last report, I said that my mother did not want to give up custody of me. My father threatened her in every way imaginable, but she did not care. She stated that she would never abandon me and would go to any length to reclaim my trust. So, since she wouldn't give in, we turned to psychological pressure. We told everyone in our family what had transpired and how my brother wanted custody of me. The relatives knew, and they attacked my mother directly, claiming that it was the least she and my father could do to make amends for the past. However, my mother blocked all of our relatives, claiming that my brother had charmed them. Typical. A week after I moved in with Kirby, she called Karen, stating, "I'll give you 2 options. You're going to come home without complaining, and we forget all this, or you're going to stay there and suffer the consequences." I refused to succumb to her demands. I informed her that even if my brother died, he would not return to that house. So she hung up with me. I called to inform Kirby because I was concerned that she would do something damaging to him. He assured me not to worry and that if anything happened, he'd notify me. Then it occurred. The police knocked on our neighbor's door, an older lady who was quite nice. The police were summoned in response to an alleged accusation of child abuse at our residence. However, when they learned they were in the incorrect residence, they hurriedly left. I pieced things together. My mother had called the cops, but she'd gone so far that she'd misplaced our address, directing the police to the wrong residence. Hours later, my mother called to suggest she could withdraw the complaint provided I went home without a fuss. Of course, I told her to go to hell and hung up. My brother apologized to the neighbor for what transpired. Then he decided that since my mother wanted to play dirty, we should play dirty too. We utilized our final weapon, our maternal grandma, the person my mother despises more than my brother. It was tough to get her contact information since, sadly, our grandma despises me and my sister for reasons we cannot control. She is the traditional grandma who has a favorite grandson. In our case, Kirby, which provided us an unfair advantage, We eventually discovered her after searching for her phone number or address. So my brother called her and told her about everything, from the assault to our current situation. When asked if she could help my brother, Grandma's sole response was that she would be here as quickly as possible. And believe me, she arrived. In our city, an hour and 30 minutes later, which was okay because my brother had simply asked her to call my mother. And she agreed to the bargain and went straight to my parents' place for a surprise visit, which my mother absolutely despises. She called me and Lucy and asked if my brother had anything to do with it, which we disregarded. Her reaction was even enjoyable. Our grandma was purposefully driving our parents insane, and they couldn't fight back because, as I know, my mother is greedy, and my grandmother owns a large plot of property that, if sold, could provide for someone for a long time. It's true. My parents are not only foolish and psychotic, but also greedy. I believe my brother must have married into the wrong family, since it is simply inconceivable. After 2 weeks of misery for our parents, my mother finally asked when she'd leave. She stated that she would only go if my mother relinquished custody of me, with which my mother disagreed. She wanted our grandmother to depart. So she played the final card. Either my mother would relinquish custody of me, or she was entirely out of the will, son, and money. Guess which one won? So we went to court, and if looks could kill, my parents would have already been buried. The judge became agitated as he recounted the events of the past, wondering how my parents escaped justice so easily. Unfortunately, in today's world, money is more valuable than a person's sins. My father even hid his face, but my mother was there, unconcerned, convinced that she had done nothing wrong. I believe the most stressful moment was when Kirby and my mother confronted each other. Believe me, if you were there and seen the stares they gave each other, it was scary. I sometimes forget that these two once lived together. My mother may appear normal and friendly, but she is deceptive and manipulative. If you do or say something she disagrees with, you are perceived as a threat and heavily reprimanded for it. My brother, on the other hand, is so open-minded that it nearly scares me. He can make friends with just about anyone. If you see a young man with a cane smiling and waving, it's probably my brother. So why can't I grasp how these two contradicting beings share the same body? Returning to the process, it was both complicated and speedy. After all, my parents were unwilling to fight for me, so our lawyer reached an agreement in which I would live with my brother, and my parents would be required to pay a very significant alimony. My mother questioned why they had to pay child support, since I was now my brother's responsibility. But my father and grandmother advised her to shut up and accept the deal. We eventually obtained it after a long and stressful process. Now, I can live with my brother, and they will have no control over me. I erased my parents' contact information exactly 30 minutes after receiving the results. I don't need it anymore. It will now become a part of the past that I would like to forget. But wait, there's more. Our granny had a big surprise before she left. My mother had never been mentioned in the will. Our grandmother took her away. Soon after, she married my father. It was even funnier. She essentially swapped it for something she'd never have. My brother is the only person mentioned in her will, which is fantastic in my opinion. Our brother Kirby got all he wanted and deserved. Not sure if I call it divine justice or whatever, but he deserved it, and we couldn't be happier. About it, I'd like to thank everyone on Reddit and the owner of this account. I'm glad you helped and guided me during this difficult time in my life, and now there's a happy ending. Even more personally, I hope I won't have to return here until absolutely necessary. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.